Just imagine for a second your most private, most sensitive medical records. We're talking doctor's notes, lab results, maybe even personal photos, stolen, and then put up for sale. For thousands of New Zealanders, this isn't some nightmare scenario. It's the reality of the ManageMyHealth data breach. So let's get into what actually went down.
Okay, let's start with a number, and it's a big one. 126,000. That's how many patients had their data compromised when hackers hit New Zealand's largest patient portal, a service that, 1.8 million people use. This isn't just about data, it's about people.
And the scale of this theft, it's just staggering. The hackers themselves are claiming they walked away with over 400,000 private medical documents. Just think about that volume for a second. It's like an entire library of incredibly personal information. And now it's in the hands of criminals.
But here's where it gets really interesting. The price tag. The hackers only demanded $60,000. Now, for a massive treasure trove of data this sensitive, that seems surprisingly low, right? Well, there's a very specific and pretty cynical reason for that, and it tells you everything you need to know about who's behind this.
So let's dive into our first section, a ransom for your health. Because this wasn't just a random smash and grab, it was a calculated threat, turning people's health information into a hostage.
So, here's the deal. In late December, while a lot of people were on their summer holiday, hackers found a way into the ManageMyHealth system. And they didn't just quietly steal the data. They made a big scene. They issued an ultimatum: pay up by our deadline or we release everything. It was, quite literally, a ransom for the health secrets of thousands. Okay, on to our next section. Hackers mean business. So you might be asking yourself, who would do something like this? Political activists? Some state-sponsored group? Nope. The answer is way more straightforward and honestly a lot more chilling. These hackers mean business, literally.
Meet the group that calls itself Kazu. And these guys, they're not shy about who they are. They've made it super clear they aren't trying to make some grand political statement. Their goal is pure profit. They see hacking and extortion as, well, just another line of work.
And this is where it gets kind of surreal. Listen to their own words. We're doing this as a business. Our main goal is money and building a good reputation in the community. A good reputation. You heard that right. They're worried about their reputation as reliable, trustworthy criminals. You can't make this stuff up. So this is their playbook, their whole business model. It's a pretty simple 4-step process. Find a weak spot, steal valuable data, demand a ransom. But it's that last step, step 4, that's the really twisted genius of it all. If a company refuses to pay, they just leak the data for free. For them, this isn't revenge. It's marketing. It's how they prove to their next victim that their threats are 100% real. It's all about building their brand.
Section 3. Patients at extreme risk. And while Kazu is busy building its brand, let's talk about what really matters here: the devastating, real-world consequences for the victims of their business model.
And when you see what was stolen, it's just mind-blowing. We are way beyond just names and phone numbers here. We were talking about your doctor's actual clinical notes, your lab results, passport details, even medical photographs, and yes, some of those include unclothed bodies. Incredibly specific things like ADHD diagnoses from psychiatrists. It is a complete and total violation of a person's privacy.
Look, don't just take my word for how serious this is. Data journalist Keith Nang, a guy who looks at this stuff for a living, gave this incredibly stark assessment. He called it probably the worst data breach that I recall seeing in New Zealand so far. When an expert like that says something like this, you really have to pay attention.
And the danger here is so real. Experts are warning that this stolen information is basically a gold mine for other criminals. It can be used for everything from identity theft and financial scams to something much darker like personal extortion and blackmail, using someone's most sensitive health secrets against them. All right, Section 4, the official response. So with citizens facing such a severe threat, how did the company and the government actually respond? Let's take a look at the actions they took.
So let's break down who did what. ManageMyHealth, the company at the center of this, they moved pretty quickly to patch the security hole. They also took the legal step of seeking a court injunction to try and block the data from being spread online. And of course, they have the huge job of notifying every single patient who is affected. On the other side, the New Zealand government has launched a full review by the Ministry of Health and made its position crystal clear. We are not paying the ransom. That's a long-standing policy, you just don't reward criminals.
And New Zealand's Health Minister, Simeon Brown, left absolutely no doubt about where he thinks the buck stops. His words were incredibly direct. People who hold data are responsible for that. They should be making sure the data is protected. It's a really pointed message to any organization, public or private, that's handling our sensitive information.
And that brings us to our final section, a national wake-up call. Because as serious as this one breach is, it's not happening in a vacuum. It's actually the latest in a string of really alarming incidents, and officials are calling it a wake-up call for the entire nation. And this timeline really tells the story. Back in 2021, a ransomware attack basically paralyzed 5 hospitals. In 2022, a hack on a supplier exposed government files. Then in 2023, the huge Latitude financial breach hit over 14 million documents. And now, ManageMyHealth. You see the pattern here, right? This isn't just a string of bad luck, it's a clear and frankly escalating trend of cyber vulnerability.
And that's exactly why the health minister's own words are so important here. He didn't just call it a problem for one company. He called it a deeply serious situation and a big wake-up call for the entire country. That signals a need for a massive shift in how New Zealand thinks about data security.
So this all leads us to the biggest question of all, the one we're all left with. As every single part of our lives, from our money to our most private health records, goes digital, who is ultimately responsible for keeping it safe? Is it the companies we trust with our data, the government that's supposed to regulate them, or, is the burden on all of us to demand a much, much higher standard? That is the crucial question this breach forces every single one of us to confront.